Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fire with Dr. Ninja Turtle. I am joined by Okie from Okies Eden, and today we're going to talk about the connection between savings, building wealth, paying off debt, gardening, and cooking, because there are analogies that work together. And so, but before I start, um, Mrs. Paula came in before the live started and said that she couldn't make it because it was her husband's birthday, Randy. So I want to say happy birthday, Randy, and I may meet Mrs. Paula at the end of May. So I'm on a tour of meeting YouTube creators as I travel around the country, and I've met a few already this week. So anyway, Oki is our special guest, so I don't want to talk about a bunch of other things and not get to him.
That's fine.
But but yeah, so Okie, tell us first about your channel and what you do on YouTube.
Sure. My channel is the main focus is the gardening, of course, and then using that for YouTube. And then it was going to be a multi-piece puzzle. Obviously, it was going to be the garden first, then moving it into the YouTube channel, and then segueing into the homestead channel, which encompasses everything from canning, farm to table cooking, things like that. But then also drawing on a lot of my history, my parents, my grandparents, my kids, bringing them into the stuff. So it's been a continually growing type idea, and me harvesting food, me cooking food, and just working in the wood shop and just creating a garden the way, because it's Okies Eden. Okie is just a nickname for an Oklahoman. I now live in Oklahoma, so I'm Okie. Eden being from the Garden of Eden, which was a beautiful garden. Um, so I wanted to have a beautiful Oklahoma garden that may not be beautiful to anybody else, but to me, it's all my memories. I have signs up that talk about that have the cities I lived in or grew up in with the mileage, like you see on the show MASH, where it has the wooden signs painted. I have those out there I've made, and subscriber garden to help support my subscribers by growing their stuff, and then they can take those videos I put out and post them on their page. And now it's even segueing in where I'm trying to help others get monetized using the analogy of the garden, a community, a co-op garden where you have a small community and they all work in the garden. They all are able to take from the garden, but they all have to work in the garden. And so that's why I do some of those YouTube garden things where we help each other with playlists and following each other and bringing in new people into the fold, into the community. And that's basically it in a nutshell.
Well, Okie, I'm glad that you mentioned, because I wasn't sure if you were going to mention your community. You are really building quite the community. I mean, I when I joined, I was just following your channel,
Mhm.
and as I got to meet other people, other subscribers, right? Which is what I love about my channel is
Yep.
I have the Nightbot, which if you type fire, it puts your channel in the
Yeah.
live. And like you, I'm trying to connect people, and I'm
Hmm.
trying to support other people. So just like when you announce, okay, we're supporting so and so over the next couple of days, then I'm on it, and
Hmm.
I'm supporting those people. The other
Yep.
thing that you taught me, and all of this has nothing to do with our topic today, but that's what
That's
I
right.
do is I go off topic. But you taught me how to get on YouTube on my TV, which you talked
Yeah.
about doing it, and
Hmm.
I never knew it was possible. And I had the TV where it was possible. And
Hmm.
so anyway, you sparked an idea in me. But
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I get to the topics because I never do.
Sure.
You
Sure. No, no, no. I get it. I
and,
get it.
and we may not get through all of them, but we're going to get through as many sort of as we can in 1 hour, because my lives are 1 hour and then everybody get on with their life. I'm
Yep.
retired. I don't know. Okay, are you retired? I don't know if you're retired. I've never asked you that question.
I would call it semi-retirement. My Everybody by now knows I have a special needs. That's why we moved up here to Oklahoma. I have a special needs grandson, and anybody that works with special needs knows it's very difficult on parents because it's 24/7 caretaking. It's not just you have a child that you put in the living room and say, hey, go play for a while I do dishes or something. It requires constant care. And there's the stress level, the financial stress, all of that. And we decided, we were at the time in our life financially where my wife has a good job, fortunately, that I was able to step away from my position and survive, tight budget, albeit, whatever. But we decided that would be the thing to do. So I do a lot of therapy. I take them to therapy. So they'll take a vacation every now and then, 2 or 3 days, go somewhere. And then I'll have my grandson at our house, and because I can do all of his therapies, and I've worked with the therapist so much that I just continue his therapies through the week. And then he always took to me the most out of anybody in the family, other than the parents. So if I walk in the room, he'll find me. So we just decided, you know what, we're gonna bite the bullet, clamp down, and then it'll be better if I stayed home to help with them and him, and then my wife can be the breadwinner. But then that leaves me. I do the cooking, the cleaning, the mowing. I do all of the gardening, everything around the house is on me, and she brings home the bacon, basically. So that's the story behind it. Uh, I could retire right now if I wanted to, because I do have a 401k that I can draw, now without penalty. And I do have a pension I can draw from my last position if I wanted to. I don't want to. So we're just letting those ride. Because the longer you wait on those, the more monthly you get. So I'm pushing it off because I'm 60. So I'm pushing it off as long as I can, because they're all transferable upon my death. If I was to die first, it all goes to my wife. So she would end up having the lifetime, the 401k and my other stuff to go with her stuff. So it's set up with both of us that way. So we're able to do it. So we just figured, it's going to be 1 or 2 years where I would want to retire. So we'll just bite the bullet for a couple of years and tighten our belt. And it's not been a problem. It's been great. So, but no,
Well,
long story short, I'm not retired, but I am.
no, and I sort of was guessing that maybe you were semi-retired, but I just couldn't. I've never gotten the story, and so I love all the stories, especially about your grandson.
Mhm,
I think that that's super important to take care of family.
mhm.
And not many people do that.
No,
Not
no,
many
we don't.
people do that. So I just wanted to give you credit for that.
Oh, thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
so I'm gonna try to get to my topics here because I never
Yeah.
do. Um, but when I talked to you about this coming on the interview, I really wanted to connect the gardening and cooking
Mhm. Yeah.
with finances, with personal
Mhm,
finance. And so, can you tell us how? Let's talk about savings first,
mhm,
because that may be something that you started when you were young
mhm.
and continued throughout your entire career, or you
Yeah.
started later. I don't know, but
Mhm.
how is that like your garden, or how is that like cooking?
So thankfully, um, my dad was very good at. He was very good. I'm one of nine, so we were never. We didn't have two nickels to rub together. But my mom and dad could somehow feed us, clothe us, and all that. And then we used to. So we all started early. Um, we were expected to get a job as soon as we could. I had my first paid job where I paid taxes in New York State through what they call the CETA program. And I worked as a janitor's helper for 2 summers in the school there in the school district I lived in. I paid taxes, and I still remember the conversation my dad had with me. He did it with all of us. Once we had a job and we had gainful income, he took each of us in the living room, sat down with us, and said, you now have a job. You now will buy your own clothes. You will give me 10%. You will put 10% as a tithe to the church. You will do 10% savings. Whatever else you want to do with the rest is up to you. And I did want to tell you, I thought about this earlier. Dave Ramsey, if you ever watch Dave Ramsey, he's big, he's big. Before Dave Ramsey, people of my parents' age, my grandparents' age, they used that envelope method long before anybody ever came along now and says, hey, I do an envelope. My mom and dad would break the money down. That's how they taught us. So 10% for this would go in this envelope, 10% for savings would go in this envelope. And so I just learned that at an early age from my dad. And I know we want to move on, but to show you what kind of
Mm.
person my dad was, he made me give him 10%, all of us, to be living in that house. When we moved out, he saved it all. He gave it back to us. He goes, "That's how much money you gave me for the last 6 years. That's why I'm talking about savings. Because look how much you have now." I mean, that was my dad. He was very smart, and so I guess savings, like a garden, the work you put into it, the more you put into it, obviously interest rates, the more you're going to get out. It's going to be the same percentage. So 10% of $100 is $10, but 10% of $1,000 is $100. So the amount's more monetarily, but even though it's the same percentage. But the garden, I tilled it up. The first year you might get a small yield, but I know very well that when I compost and put leaves in and everything else, next year, because I put more into it, I'm going to get more out. Savings, retirement, the earlier you can start and remain, faithful to making sure, like my dad said, do it religiously. Every time you get a paycheck, some goes in the bank, some goes in the bank, whatever percentage, if it's 1%, 20%, put something away. So that's how I guess I would draw that analogy is the garden, you're going to put into it for years, and every year it's building, and building. The first year I was only getting a pound of potatoes per plant. Last year I averaged between 2 and 2.5. This year I'm shooting for 3 because I'm getting better. The dirt's getting better because I'm putting more into it, putting more into it to get more out of it. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think about the seed that you put in the ground
Yeah.
and how initially you don't see anything until it gets roots. And then, maybe when it pops up, that's when you can sort of see something. But in the
Right.
beginning with savings, you don't really
Mhm.
see it growing.
Right.
You don't really see it. But then later, you see it really
Mhm.
grow.
Well,
And I was trying to think of different vegetables that you grow out there that grow at different speeds or something.
so easy. Yeah, that's easy. Radishes are probably the fastest grow. I can plant those and harvest within 30, 35 days. Potatoes russets can be 120. So you're talking 4 months. Pumpkins, you can start seeing those about 80, 90 days in, but you'll continue to see pumpkin even if you think the thing's dying, and all of a sudden there's more vines coming out, and then you got new pumpkins. So they just don't give up. So yeah, there's some that are really quick grow. Um, you and I are from probably the same era ish. You remember CDs back in the day, and like you're
Yeah.
saying, while it's small, back in the day, I remember when CDs were paying out 6 and 7%, where you weren't getting much on a savings plan. So my dad always said, "Hey, if you have extra money, if you have say an extra, just say you had, I'm going to make it easy. You had $6,000 in the bank. You have $6,000 in the bank." He said, it's a 6 month CD, which you can roll over if you want at 7%. Put $1,000 in this month in a CD. Go to the bank, take out a CD. Next month, take another 1,000 until you get to the 6th month. By the time you hit that 6th month, your first one's coming due. So now you got all that free money that you can either just roll over, or if you need it, you can take it. But it does a couple things. Each month you're gaining that 7% on each CD, but you're never running out of the money in the bank if you had a car problem or something, you needed a roof on your house or something. You still had $5,000 more that you hadn't put in yet. So you always still had money in the background until you got to the 6th month, and then you started right from scratch again. You had 1,000 plus interest. Next month you had 1,000 more plus interest, and so on and so forth. So while it starts out small, if you roll them for a year and a half, 2 years, you know, now that's the thing with the garden. It takes time and patience. Like you said, it's going to grow. It's going to grow. And before you know it, you have a snowball of a decent amount of money that you did not work for. You literally went to the bank, gave them $1,000 and said, in 6 months, they'd be thanking you for 7%. And that's how it worked. And like my dad always said, interest is the easiest money because you don't have to fight and earn it. It's just sitting there collecting money. So
Well, and that's what I'm sorry. No, no. That's what I like about compound interest. You
Hmm.
know, a lot of people don't understand compound interest, but if you start when you're young,
Hmm.
you know, like you started your garden was smaller when you first
Hmm.
started it,
Yeah.
and you've expanded on it. And the more that you expanded on it, the more you can grow.
Yep.
And I think that is sort of like savings, you know, is that
Yeah.
you start small wherever
Hmm.
you are, $10, $100,
Hmm.
$5,
Yep.
wherever you are. And if you're consistent, like you've been consistent on YouTube, if you're consistent, it will grow.
Hmm.
And you've been consistent in growing your garden, like your subscriber
Hmm.
section,
Yeah.
and then you had flower pots. Not, I
Hmm.
mean, a flower bed. You had
Hmm.
flower beds that are different than your vegetables that you were
Yeah.
growing. So you're sort of diversifying in your garden.
Yes. Yeah. I was hoping we got to diversification.
No, no, go ahead.
I know, knowing you, I knew we were going to get there eventually. But yeah, you and I very, very well know. Like even my dad. Well, this is an old saying: "Don't put all your eggs in one basket," because if you drop the basket, they all break, right? Uh, when I started years ago, so believe it or not, I started paying into. They took Social Security out of my check at 13 years old, and that just is mind-boggling to me that I paid into Social Security till last year. So I paid into what Social Security for 46 years. And, hopefully it'll still be viable, which I'm told it still will be. According to my financial guy, he said it should be viable when I get there. So I'm not banking on it because we have other things we can go to. But, you have your Social Security if it's still viable. If you can put money into a Roth IRA, you can put so much money into Roth IRAs. You can, if you have a 401k plan, if you have, my wife's worked for the county, so she's had her retirements from the county that are sitting there waiting. I have one when I was in law enforcement for 8 years. That's sitting there waiting, and that just keeps collecting the interest. I can take that whenever I want now. So we have a diversified base. Now, linking that to a garden, when you're talking survival, as being one of nine, our garden fed us. My parents didn't have money to buy all this extravagant stuff. They would buy the milk. Well, I'm sorry, we got the milk from my cousin's farm. We paid for it, but it was cheap. And they could have eggs. We got stuff from them like that. But we grew all the vegetables. And you always started with what is going to feed your family. And that's why I do this today is green beans, potatoes. I want to do 200 pints of beans, 200 pounds of potatoes. That'll feed me and my wife the whole year. Won't have to buy any canned goods or anything. But now, once I have those settled, and I did a prioritized list when I was doing my garden planning this year, and I said there's I have priority lists: top priority, second priority, third priority, then subsets. So I had my first priority was make sure I have green beans and potatoes for the whole year. Make sure the subscriber garden is a success because then they can take videos and footage from that and use it on their channel. Everything else after that is diversification. If you see my video the other day behind me, I harvested radishes. I harvested onion green tops. 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing carrots. I'm harvesting turnips. So being diversified, I'm not always eating the same thing. Um, we eat different foods, but I have the two main crops. So going back to financial, we're depending more on our retirement funds from the two or not companies, from my last job and from her jobs at the county. Those are going to be our main source. But we're also diversified with my 401k. We have a couple of Roths, but those are sitting there. If someday we don't have to use it, but if I have a heart attack or something, or I'm laid up for a while, or my wife gets sick, or one of us are in a wheelchair, or we're in the hospital for an extended stay, that's our slush fund. So we have that money sitting there. We don't touch. I can touch it anytime I want now because I'm old enough. I can actually take it and only on the 401k I'd have to pay taxes on it, but the Roths I don't. But we're not touching it. We'd love to, but we don't because we always said that's an emergency. That's the break the glass in case of an emergency type of thing. So Always be prepared. We have our two main food sources. We have our two main financial retirement things, but then we also have other things diversified that are just gravy to make your retirement more manageable, I guess I would say.
Well, thank you. And I'm sorry, I kept dropping out twice now. I have dropped out of the live and I've been able to come back in and do a resume, which I've never seen any of these features before. So if I drop out again, Okie's just going to take over. And so
Okay.
there you go. But let's let's talk about debt as being like weeds, and getting rid of debt like getting rid of the weeds in your garden. So go ahead,
Yes.
Okie. Hope I don't drop out again.
Oh, debt, debt is like one of the dirtiest four-letter words you can say in financial stuff. It really is. I think everybody's gone through it. When I was up in when I lived in upstate New York, born and raised, I worked at the same company for 30 years, and I was the production manager, basically general manager of a manufacturing company. And I made good money. My wife, she had a job with the city or the state. She was a school employee, so we both had really good jobs. And at that point in your life, you're just starting out. We had our kids early, um, but you feel kind of invincible because you're like, well, I'm making X number of money. My wife's making X number. We can do whatever we want. We're unstoppable. We were still putting money away. We knew I had my 401k through them, and she had a retirement package through them. So we're like, we don't have to worry about anything. But before you know it, we were using our credit card because they were so easy. That's when they really started handing them out to everybody in the 80s. They were just, I mean, if you were getting things in the mail. And I think at one point everybody might have done this, is you would run one card up, and then after a year, they said it's at a 2% interest rate, but after a year, it's going to be 12. But you knew that within 10 months, you were going to get another credit card offer that was going to offer you 2% if you transferred money over. And then you could wipe out that other debt. So we did that, but then now you feel invincible again because you're now like, I'm back down to 2%. Everything I'm paying is pretty much going on the principal. Well, before you know it, you forget one time and all of a sudden you're paying 12% on something. Then you're making payments, but you're not making any dent in anything. And that's when we finally decided we stopped. We said, okay, we got to rethink this. And we literally went back to the method with the envelopes. We basically had a deal with each other, and we each had a spending. We had $100 each for the month. So if you wanted a coffee, if you wanted to get your fingernails done, you had $100. That was your stipend or whatever for the month. Everything else had an envelope, and it took that when we started to see, wow, we got way too much credit card debt. It's ridiculous. We had a great credit rating because we were making all of our payments. Our credit rating was fire. Hey, see how I segued that in? You're fire. That was fire. But there's people that don't do that. They just keep rolling it, and they roll it. Then they pay the other credit card with this credit card, and before you know it, and you see it now, you see a lot of stories. They're so far in debt that they don't know how to. Then they'll pay these financial managers to help get them out of debt, which then puts them in further debt. So it's debt is it's like I said, it's a dirty word, and we got out of it quickly because we did make good money. And there's a lot of people that aren't as fortunate because they're doing that because they don't have the financial freedom that we did have. We did it because we were just being dumb and lazy with our money. There's people that live paycheck to paycheck and have to use their credit card to survive. And then they use it again to survive. And before you know it, now they're drowning in debt. And it's not always the fault of their own. It's because it's a situation that they're trying to get out of. And it's a recurring thing. So I don't quite know how to segue that into the garden. So you might want to help me there.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about, when you're weeding, you're giving your plants the freedom to thrive. You're
Mhm.
you're not choking them. The
Right.
weeds choke your plant's growth.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
And so you have to weed to keep your plants healthy or your
Yes.
vegetables, and give them the room and the nutrients that the weeds would take.
Yep.
And I think that's what I was, sort of
Oh,
thinking about
yeah.
that. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah, because I see you out there and you're saying, well, I have to weed over here, and you put up a barrier of a fence down at the
Mm-hmm.
bottom so that your
Yeah.
weed eater, your weed trimmer
Hmm.
doesn't get torn up by the bottom of the fence.
Right.
But that way you can keep everything nice and neat.
Right.
And that's a whole nother thing, keeping your
Yeah.
finances nice and neat in
Yes.
order, you know, like your garden, keeping everything in rows. You were talking about building rows.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm good. I keep talking about your garden.
Yeah. Definitely. That's a really good one. I can really come up with a decent one for that, I think. So rows, you always plant your crops in rows, certain distance apart per seed, different depths per seed, whatever. But you try to plant them in rows. And I put a stake and a stake at the other end and draw a tight string across it. And then you can follow that. So I guess if you can set up your thought process and have a system in place, and you got to stay with that so that everything stays straight in your financial life. However, things happen. If I took you out, my green beans are growing like weeds right now. I had them set up perfectly straight rows with a straight string, just like I said. 2 days later, we got another big thunderstorm, about 3, 4 inches of rain. If you go out there now, my rows are doing all of this because the rain came down and pushed all of them around. I would liken that to, you don't know. You can have the best plan in place. You can have your straight line out. I'm putting so much money in the bank, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I have a 401k. And then all of a sudden the stock market plummets, or all of a sudden the stock market shoots up over 50,000. And then it goes back down to 40, and it just sways back and forth. So just like in life, if you have a 401k, even though you might have a lot of money in a 401k, you could have, just say easy number, you could have $100,000 in there right now. And in 2 days of a bad market, you could be down to 80. You can lose 20,000 like that, or you can gain 20,000 in a volatile situation like that. If you remember back in the Depression era, all those millionaires, when they had everything in stocks. They lost everything. Many of them, off themselves, to put it, so I don't have to say the other word, but they unalive themselves because they didn't know what else to do. They had all this money. They don't know how to live. They don't know how to live on basic food. They have people serving them and taking care of their house and driving them places. They didn't live in a real world. When that whole their real world crashed, they had no reset. They didn't know what to do. They had nothing else to build it again. It took years to come out of that. So they just basically said, I can't do this. So you got to prepare for that. That's why diversification we talked about. So even if you're putting your money in every week, you're gaining your interest, you're feeling good about your life, and then tomorrow the engine blows up in my car and I still owe it on it and it's out of warranty. So now I have to pay on the car and I got to fix the engine or get a different car. Now I just kind of took 2 steps back. But that's why diversification, preparation, the more prepared you are, you can kind of weave your way through those problems. So that's, I guess, how I would draw that analogy. That plan, like they say, you don't plan to fail. I'm sorry. Yeah. People don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So make your plan, stick to it as good as possible, but know there's going to be hiccups. Things are going to happen. You know, your house, our neighbor's house, you don't know it over here, but 2 years ago, right across the street, they had the unthinkable. Their house burned to the ground right across from us. They couldn't stop it. So I had to have another house built. And, so that was a huge strain, obviously, financial, on the relationship, on life in general. Because that's what happens. You can have a house fire, you can get in a car accident, you can be injured, you could have a heart attack. And then all of a sudden, that straight line does a little wave and then you got to get it corrected back on the path again.
Well, and I like that in that, I'm sort of connecting everything to your garden, is that the less dependent you are on, let's say, the stock market or your
Yep.
finances. Like your garden can feed you, and you have children who have gardens, and you guys trade food
Hmm.
between you so that you're
Hmm.
not as dependent
Right.
on outside sources for your food. And I think that if you have various different income streams so
Hmm.
that you're not dependent on one income stream,
Right.
we talked about paycheck to paycheck.
Hmm.
When you only have that one paycheck and that one income stream, if something
Hmm.
happens to that paycheck, and I've
Hmm.
been there
Yeah.
where I had one job and I said, if I lose this one job, I'm in
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah.
Now today in retirement, I have multiple income streams, so I'm not
Hmm.
dependent. But the
Right.
other thing is, and I want you to maybe address this, is the lower you spend, the less you need a lot of money. I guess the
Hmm.
more frugal you are. Because you
Hmm.
talk about that table that you got that you're
Hmm. Yeah.
repurposing, the one with the metal legs.
Hmm.
And I forget where you got it, but anyway, it didn't cost you much where you got that
Nope.
table. I think it might have been free, but my point is that you're very frugal,
Hmm.
and I think if a person is frugal, regardless of the amount of money they make, that
Hmm.
they can be okay, especially in those uncertain times that you talked about.
Hmm. Yeah. If you, I did a canning live yesterday. And I was making the joke. There's a joke. They used to say this to me all the time when I was growing up. If it's free, it's me. They said that was my slogan, because if I was out somewhere and I saw it, I'm like, you're getting rid of that? Yeah, I'll take it. Put it in the car, you know. And that's how I got that table, was on Facebook Marketplace. One of my neighbors posted it. And they said, hey, it's free. I said, is it a metal frame? She says, yep. I said, I'll be right there. So I went and picked it up. It's a metal frame. I took that cheap board off of it. I'm going to be replacing it with um, pallet wood, which I get from a friend of mine that works at a company that they have people come in, please come take these pallets. So I always, hey, you got to have a pallet guy I like, because I do a lot with pallets. I make furniture, I make fencing, I do all sorts of stuff with it. But the funny one yesterday was we got my wife an e-bike, because I ride my other bike around, but as we get older, she doesn't have the range of motion she did. So she doesn't want to just pedal all the time. She wanted the electric assist. So that's what we do. So she pedals and pedals until she gets a little tired. Then she could just hit the assist for a minute or two, and then we go back to pedaling. So I took her bike out because she wanted me to go try it to make sure we were going to hang on to it and not have to send it back. So I took it around and beat it up pretty good around our area in the back roads. And as I'm driving along, I look down and there's a brick, just a nice brick. And I like made mental note it's next to that tree. And I kept going about a mile up the road. Then I'm like, okay, I'm coming back. I came back, I pulled over, I picked that brick up and put it in here, and I brought it in to do my live. And I said, when I say it's free, it's me. I mean, it's free, it's me. I just picked a brick up. That's how frugal I am, because I use those to weight down weed paper. So I didn't have to pay $1.50 for that brick. I got it free. So now I took it out here. It's already being used in the garden. Um, be frugal with stuff. I mean, you'd be surprised if you want to see frugal to a T. If you watched my daughter's channel, she talks about Facebook Marketplace all the time. She scours Facebook Marketplace. She gets stuff that is $300. She gets it for $20. Being frugal up the road. Again, my neighbor put on Facebook Marketplace the one day. He had a smoker. It was one of those. It's like a $450 smoker, and it's got the little the screw turn, the auger that moves the pellets through the fire, and it smokes it and smokes the meat. The motor went. Well, he had left it outside, got rain in it, and it went in and it swelled up all the pellets. And he turned it on, it burned the motor out. So he said, all I know is the motor doesn't work. It's burned out. I said, okay. So he said, it's free. So I said, even if I don't get the auger working, it's still a smoker. It's got the smoke box. I'll throw wood in it and use it as a regular smoker. I came home, $15, Amazon, found the motor, $15, cleaned the auger out, put it back in, put the new motor on, it runs like a champ. So I have a $450 smoker that I paid nothing for except for $15. I got that $15 canner. So now as I can, it's costing me pennies on the dollar to do my own vegetables. So there's ways out there. And that's the other thing my dad, that was one of his famous things. We still joke about that to this day, was he always said, control what you can control. I can't control the stock market. I can't control who's in Congress. I can't control who's the president. I can't control other countries' politics. I can't control tariffs. I can't control shipping, nothing. But I can control my finances. I can control when I go out to dinner or what I eat for the week, or can I cheat and be more frugal with my food bill, or can I cut corners somewhere else? Maybe not go to dinner this month. There's choices you can make. And he always said, control what you can control. Everything else that's out of your control is just, you're going to have to let that be white noise and focus on having enough money to feed your family, have a roof over your head and clothes. And that was always his mantra, was control what you can control, because you can't control 90% of everything in the world, but you can control how you spend your dollar.
Well, and I love that control the controllables. I've somewhat been ignoring the chat because I've been talking to you and not looking, but I just want to acknowledge a couple of people real quick in the chat before we go on. So we're about halfway through. So Tumbleweeds on Fire is here. CL Fantasy is here.
Yep.
Julie Jordan Scott is here. And she was talking about harvesting earlier in the chat. And so we're going to get to that in just a moment, because we're at that age where we start harvesting. Younger people are not necessarily harvesting. But Amaya is here. Let me see. I'm trying to make sure I get Andy Mon. Andy Mon TV was here a half hour before the live started.
I saw that, yeah.
And Andy Mon and I were chatting. I mean, he is a super supporter. And give me 2 seconds. I'm going to scroll up here in the chat because I know I missed. Mushama Success is here. Fairbrick Studio is here. And between you and Fairbrick Studio, I find the people that we are supporting. And I'm going to mention that Andy Mon is over 3,000 watch hours, and he's heading for his 4,000. And I'm just looking to make sure that I've said hi to everyone as much as I can. Okay, we're going to get back to it. So we went through the debt. So hold on. Let's see. Okay, let me ask you this question. What's your biggest financial weed right now? What is your biggest financial issue right now in early semi-retirement?
Honestly, the only thing I could think of was the fact that I did step away from my position to help with my family. So we had to tighten our belts. Other than that, honestly, I got to say, um, I've been fortunate in my life. I can't stress that enough. I had great parents that taught me well. And even though, when you're younger, you don't heed that advice. Now that my parents are gone, I can hear their voice often. This is what I said. This is what I said. This is what I said. And back then it was annoying. And now it's being basically, spoken, because I didn't listen when I should have. But that's probably it. There's things I would love to get and love to do that we just aren't going to be able to do. And that's not a hardship, just because that sounds so like a first world problem. It's laughable that I can't do everything I want to do. It's like, there's no guarantee you're going to do everything you want to do, but bucket list things. I'd love to go to Europe, but that's not a financial hardship. It's just, that's a reality. So honestly, we don't owe a mortgage. So we own both our vehicles. We've been frugal about that. Um, Other than, there's things I would love to do and get for my grandson that we just can't afford because things are expensive. If anybody else deals with somebody that has a special needs child, things are not cheap. They do not care that you have a special needs child. They will jack that price up, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you got to find used stuff. So that would probably be the biggest thing. Is we would love to do more for our grandkids, but being on one income, we have to watch that. But once I start collecting retirement with my wife working, then all that goes away. But so I almost don't even want to say that's a hardship, because like I said, it's laughable. And I got to just say, I honestly can't give you a really true financial hardship right now that I have. We've both been fortunate with decent health, through our lives. Um, I don't know what else to say to that.
No, I love that answer because I feel so blessed. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things you know about my channel is that when I get monetized, all of the money goes to the homeless. Because when I started YouTube, I said to myself, I need a mission. I don't need
Yeah.
money necessarily
Mhm.
because I'm frugal, but I
Mhm.
need a mission to be on YouTube. And so that was my mission. And I said,
Mhm.
okay, if you start this, you promised yourself that you're never going to take any money from me,
Right.
and so I'm sort of trying to keep the promise to myself,
Yeah.
is what I'm doing. Um, I have here, how does cooking equal money management? I don't know if you can answer to
Yeah.
that or,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. So cooking, it's like anything else in life. Gardening, you could use both for the analogy. If you're going to cook something correctly, um, not everything, because you're my grandparents, grandmother, grandfather, and both sides. My mom, they could pull food out of the air and toss it in a dish and it would taste delicious. But when you are planning an event, like we're going to have my grandson's birthday party here in June, and we start to plan whatever the theme is. And then what you do is before then we start to look, because we have May and June, so we got a month and a half before we have to really get anything for it. But if it was going to be tacos or whatever, now is when you plan the event. You just like a wedding, you plan what you're going to have for food, who's going to be, if there's going to be a DJ, live band, no music, open bar, whatever. And now we know we're going to need burger, we're going to need taco stuff, we're going to need all the fixins for that. And you write it all down, you figure out what the budget is, and then you can start to get stuff each week, start to watch the sale for burger or for chicken. So you have it, you don't go the day before when all of a sudden, out of the blue, prices go up. And now chicken went from $2 a pound to $6 a pound. Um, so just, starting out, you're going to start somewhere. If you're going to start a savings plan, what is your end game for the savings plan? If you're going to, how much you're going to put in each week, figure out what you can put in each week, figure out what your budget is. If you want to do a Roth IRA, well, I can put this in. I can put so much in per year. By law, you can only put in X number per person, or as a couple, you can put a combined amount in. I forget what the amount is nowadays, but you can do that. And if you can plan ahead and say, okay, I can put $1,000 on each year, that means I got to put about 80 to $90 a month in. And that now you can start to plan for that instead of getting to the end of the year saying, man, I only have $400 in the bank. I really wanted to put $1,000 into a Roth this year and I didn't make it. You could have put little amounts in to the Roth. So when you get to the end, you're there. It's already been planned out. So we're literally planning by the recipe. What is your end game? What are you trying to accomplish? You're diversifying. How are you going to diversify? Make your life a recipe. Say, okay, I want to have a couple of Roths. I want to have my 401k, and I'm working somewhere now that I have a retirement, but I also hopefully will have my Social Security. And you can get that all together, and that forms your basically your financial recipe book. And then every so often, that's what we do. My wife has all of our retirements, the 401k, our bank account, the Roths, all of that in a binder. And then every 2 or 3 months, she goes in and she updates that binder. And then she does a spreadsheet. And so she knows that if we both stopped working today, we get X amount. If we wait till 61 at this point, we'd get this amount. If I wait till 65, we get this. She has it all figured out. So she's very good with that stuff. So basically, it's just like planning a recipe. You got to put the time in. If you're just going to do an ad hoc type, oh, I'm going to go throw $20 in the bank today. 1% interest. That's not really a good bet. I mean, you're better off, or like you do, figure out how can I get a property. I've always talked about renting. We've thought about renting some of the homes I've refurbished, but I just don't want to be. I don't want to be a landlord. I don't like to deal with people in that capacity. So we've always just sold them, took the money, and that's how we got this place where we just kept banking it, rolling it, banking it, rolling it, and then when we moved up here, it was all paid off. So that's what helped us with my
mm,
wife's job was, we planned, we looked at the recipe, and we knew that we could get this place free of charge, not owe anything on it, and walk in at night knowing there's no mortgage over our head. because it took planning it like a recipe. And I'll tell you what, we plan. I mean, my wife and I would sit down often. We go over the budget. She has her book, and we do that quite often. If we're starting to overspend a little bit somewhere, we pump the brakes. And so we always have a plan.
And I love that you rolled the equity from prior properties to get the amount of funds to buy this property, because it's not everybody wants to be a landlord.
Right.
I have to tell you, I'm the worst landlord there is. So I learned that I can't manage my own properties. That's just one of the things I
Hmm.
learned. I'm just not good with people.
Hmm.
If somebody tells me that they can't pay rent because their child needs a birthday or Christmas,
Hmm.
I'll say, okay, don't pay the rent. I'm just not a business, person. Um, so anyway, my rentals are all under property management. One, it allows me to travel in
Right.
retirement. Like I'm traveling now in Maryland. I won't be home until uh, the end of April. But the other part to that is that it's all that money management that you talked about, like a recipe. And we'll go
Yep.
back to Dave Ramsey, where he said, tell your money where to go.
Right.
So you're not wondering where your money went. And that's
Right.
what you and your wife did. You
Yeah.
know, you guys sit down and you plan. And I have to do that at the beginning of every month. I look at, okay, here's how much I'm getting from teaching. Here's how much I'm getting from rental properties, which rental properties I don't know every month, but I do know Social Security, which I just started, and my pension, which I've had for some years now. I say
Hmm.
teaching, pension, Social Security. Those are, I know how much I'm getting.
Right.
Rental properties, either, like you said, up or down. It could be a
Right.
negative number some
Hmm.
months, and you just don't know. So, what I'm saying is, it's great that you guys plan ahead, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to get into, because I want to make sure I address what Julie Jordan Scott said about being in the harvesting
Hmm.
phase. You know, um, I am in the harvesting phase as far as rental properties go.
Hmm.
You start by trying to build like a portfolio of rental
Yeah.
properties, but then at some point you start saying, okay, it's time to start paying these off
Yep.
and start harvesting the income. And
Right.
that's where I'm at today. I'm not there yet, but I'm starting the harvest season. But I want to hear about your harvesting, because if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I know nothing about gardening. Do you harvest different things at different times throughout the
Hmm.
year?
Yeah. Hmm. So what I do is, um, and actually, like I talked about how we're diversified, it's the same thing on the harvest. We're gonna take harvest from our financial stuff. Like I may never touch my Social Security if I don't have to. Um, with my family genetics, both my parents died from Alzheimer's. Um, it's a hereditary disease. There's a really good chance that I'm going to get that, and I'm cool with that. I have no problem with that. So I'm holding off on that as long as I possibly can, because the longer I hold off, the bigger that amount is. If I don't need it, when I do pass, what happens is they take the higher amount. So my wife would then lose hers, but she'd gain mine. So if she was only getting 2,000 a month, mine's 4,000 a month. She's going to get 4,000 a month versus the two. So we're holding off on that. So that's going to be a different harvest time. I have a smaller one I can take anytime. We might just take it just so we have some fun money. We don't know. We haven't thought about that. But again, and then in 62, I'll take something. And then she has hers, she can take it 62 and 65. So different harvest times. As far as gardening, yes. So what I do typically is, and you'll see, I'll talk about this a lot, is stagger planting is how I do it. Is like my potatoes out here. You'll see half my potato patch is up, half isn't, because I plant 2 or 3 rows specifically because of the weather in Oklahoma is so volatile that you can have 90 degrees and a tornado the one day in March. And then a week later, you'll have 22 degrees. So not only can you get root rot, then you can get freeze. So potatoes are a decent cold weather plant. So I start with potato around late February. If I lose a few potatoes, my son gave me 30 potatoes. If I lost those potatoes, I didn't lose anything. They were given to me. They were free. So I take a chance. I roll the dice. I rolled the dice. I won, survived. So now I have 30, 30 plus, 40 plus potatoes up out here now that I'll probably be harvesting in May. In the meantime, 2 weeks later, I plant 2 more rows. 2 weeks later, I plant 2 more rows. Because anybody that understands potato farming is you don't want 12 rows of potatoes coming due at the same time and you're the only one doing it. Because you're going out with a spade fork, taking the plant, rolling the potatoes. You're going to do that 100, 120 times. And you're going to be hopefully getting 2 to 3 pounds. You're going to run out of room fast. You're going to be overwhelmed. You don't want to leave them in the ground too long. So if I plant 30 plants now, when they're ready, I can dig up 30 plants in a couple hours, be done, get some processed, get some in storage. And then 2, 3 weeks later, I've already eaten a bunch of those. I can go back out and roll 2 more, 3 more rows. And then after 6 or 8 weeks time, I've rolled them all. Then in the meantime, I already have some more sprouting. I go back to that first row and I replant. And same thing all the way down the line. So I do that with all of the vegetables. So what I'll do is then I'll take radishes, grow quick. So radishes, beets, turnips are all cold weather plants. I can start those in late February, early March. And like I said, if they die, they get wiped out, you're out $1 for the thing of seeds. You go get another thing of seeds. So I take a chance because the chance I take is early harvest versus getting it wiped out. 99% of the time I get an early harvest because it didn't get wiped out. This year, it did wipe out my first bean patch. So I had to replant. So that's a little behind. So that's how I do it. So yeah, I plan it so I'm never getting overwhelmed with one harvest at each time. And I think that would honestly, and you might know this, I think you probably would know this better than me. You're more into the financial aspect of things, but you know, and I know that if I took all my retirement packages at 62, so I took my 401k, I got my social security, I got this, I got that. When I go to do taxes the following year, they're going to see this huge amount of money at one time. Your taxes are going to be wild versus, okay, I'm taking 10,000 this year from this account. And then next year I'll take 5 or 10 from this. You know what I mean? Try to take it slowly so you're not getting hit with these. One year you made 40,000 in your retirement, and then come January you took the rest of them, and now you're at 120. I think there'd be some kind of a. I would think there'd be a tax. Maybe they're not. Maybe not. But I would think there would be a tax hit on that. Is that correct? The higher if you made a lot more.
Well, I will tell you, I am embarrassed because you brought that up. Because I was trying to get through this live without talking about my tax hit this year.
Yeah.
I made a
I'm sorry.
mistake in 2025. It's the exact mistake that you just talked about. I made this mistake in 2025 is that I was loaning money out. And that's a whole nother story in itself. But I was loaning money from my retirement accounts. Well, I decided not to do that anymore. So I cashed in one of my IRAs, right?
Gotcha.
And I said to myself, I'll pay the taxes during 2025. Well, life happened during 2025. Like you talk about a tornado or this and that
Mhm.
comes up. And so I didn't pay the taxes. And so
Oh,
now I had to write a huge check to the IRS this past week. And
wow.
and that's exactly what you talked about. So I now have to pay that back because I had to borrow the money from myself to pay the
Mhm.
IRS. So I have to pay
Right.
myself back this money. But I have a plan. Like we talked about, I have a plan this year to pay that money back and never do that again. I'll
Yeah,
never cash in another IRA.
that's
Um,
right.
it's like you said, I will most likely never need my retirement accounts. I put money in with each of my colleges. I'll
Right.
probably never need that money. I'll
Right.
never touch it.
Right.
It all goes into a trust at the end. But the point is that I made the exact mistake. I was trying to get through the live without talking about it because it's embarrassing to me. But you brought it up towards the end of the live, which is fabulous because I need to admit that I made a mistake
Mhm.
financially. I think nobody gets through this without making any mistakes
No.
whatsoever.
No.
We all make
No.
some little mistake here and there.
I tell you what.
So you I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll tell you what. I say this in many of my lives. Failure or mistakes, I don't consider them. Let them be a teacher. Don't look at a failure and say, "Oh, I failed. I'm useless. I'm worthless. So I'm just going to go inside and I don't want to talk to anybody. Just leave me alone." If I always used YouTube as the example, and I can use my garden as an example. I know better than to plant early, but I still do it sometimes, and I make that mistake because my weakness is impatience. I want food and I want it now, so I plant it as early as possible, and sometimes I lose it. Um, and I always like to say, so I know that I shouldn't do that. So next year I might not even start till mid-March where I plant, and I'll try to be a little more patient. Same thing in life. If something happens, like on YouTube, I was early on, my first 6 months, I was watching analytics like a hawk, watching stuff go up, go down, figuring it out. I was trying to figure out the algorithm. I took notes. I was doing this and that and the other thing. And I finally realized, well, why did this one fail? Why did this one fail? At one point, you might say, well, that's why I always tell people don't quit, because go figure out why. Take your information, go into Gemini, go into ChatGPT, go in and search it out. You'd put in, hey, I lost viewers on this. Why? Or why didn't this have a good click through rate or whatever? And it'll say, well, give me the thumbnail and tell me what the title is and blah, blah, blah. It'll come back and it'll say, well, that's really not a really good description. It doesn't tell them anything. YouTube doesn't know how to place it. So it's kind of all over the place. So I said, okay, I'm going to do another one. Can you write me the title and a description? It did. And that one did much better. So that failure taught me to say, it's not a bad video. I might have worded something wrong, or I took the wrong picture for the thumbnail or something. And then you can change it up and you correct your path. And then that's when I became monetized, because I realized the mistakes I was making. And then I started pushing and learning from others, and let something that happened that's bad, don't take it as, oh, woe is me. What did I do wrong? And how do I fix it? So next time it doesn't happen. And then you build on that every time. And before you know it, you're stacking a win on a win on a win more than not.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's how I found your channel, was when you were giving people your experience with the algorithm and what
Mm-hmm.
you were learning from checking your analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your other channel's name, which I'm trying to remember because I've now been
Okies
on
Hustle.
Okies Eden for so long
I
that,
still use
what
it.
was
I
it?
still use
Oh,
Okies Hustle.
Okies Hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Okies Hustle. That's how I found you, was Okies Hustle, and probably through Mrs. Paula's retirement, I think. But I learned so much,
Yeah.
that I just never knew. I started a YouTube channel and I was just posting. I had no clue
Yeah.
about analytics, thumbnail,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And so I
Yeah.
want to thank you
Oh, yeah.
publicly
No
here,
worries.
because I learned a lot from you,
Yeah.
and my channel
Yes.
has grown because of some of the things that you've taught me. And so, anyway, that's how I became a fan. So,
I appreciate it.
so I just wanted to thank you.
Um, that is still a valid channel. I'm not posting anything to it yet. I use it right now to help others with watch hours, so I can subscribe from both channels. And then what I do is, once I run through somebody's watch hour or their playlists and I run out, I switch to that one during the day, and I can give them double watch hours, because I can go to my son's house, sign in on his IP address, run it on that channel, and then they get double time because it's a different IP address, different channel. So that's what I use it for. But later this year, when things calm down in the garden and on the rest of the channel, now I have a better base being monetized, knowing things that I know now. I'm going to translate that, move it over, and then use that channel to do how to grow your YouTube frugally, and how to do it the old fashioned way, by working at it, not listening to a guru that tells you you're going to get rich if you use one hashtag, because that's just nonsense. But how to systematically look at YouTube and work towards a goal. Just like gardening, and we're going to use the same. That's why I use garden analogies over on that channel, and that was early on. I wasn't even monetized. I was using that because I was saying, when I get monetized, that's why I'm using this channel. I'm going to tell you what's happening over here, and I'll talk about it over here. And then I started talking about it on my Okies Eden channel. But I am going to get back, because I want the separation for my homesteading and then grow your YouTube. I don't care if that one ever gets monetized. That is not the goal. I wanted a monetized channel. The other one can be, you want to come, show up once a week. We'll talk YouTube stuff. You don't have to subscribe to me. You don't have to like anything, talk about anything. You just want to come watch and interact. That's fine. If that never gains another subscriber, there's 93 there. I don't care. That's not what it's for. It's just I want people on this channel, on my channel, my main channel, to know once a week I'll probably be over there talking growth. So come on over. There's no expectation. I want to help you, like I said all along. And I know you're the same way. Got a hummingbird right above me. Um, you're the same way. You help people. There's givers and takers in life. I think you and I we're both we'd be noted as givers, pay it forward type of people. And I don't need $1 million. I want to help people get monetized. If that ever translates into better time, watch hours, and money for me, that's great. If it doesn't, I go to bed at night knowing that me, you, other people that help push other channels, we help get them monetized. And now they're happy. And then they're trying to pay it forward. And so that's the community you were talking about earlier, is just like the co-op garden, everybody working together. I'm not competing against you. Even if I was in financial stuff or you were in gardening, you and I could still sit here and have a conversation, because we're not at it with each other. We're literally with each other trying to get others monetized. Like we're trying to help you get monetized, and then you're going to pay it forward. You're going to give yours to charity. You're going to do charitable things. We pay it forward. Unfortunately, there are people out there that you'll be used. I've been used a couple times by people. I don't say who, but there are ones that will use you to get watch hours and subscribers, and then you will never hear from them again. And that's fine, because there's people like that. And the sooner you resolve yourself to knowing that there's givers and takers, you're going to be fine. Your channel's going to grow. I just always say, keep being a giver. We're on the third for a real short period of time. I don't care what religion, I don't care what color you are, I don't care what country you're from. I can be kind to anybody, I can help anybody until they don't want your help. If they don't want your help, you can't help them. But the world would be a much better place if we had more givers and less takers, in my opinion. People that pay it forward. And I'm finding on YouTube more than in regular life, there's more givers than takers, which is great. That's how I've met a lot of people.
Well, and I want to thank you for saying that, because I'm attracted to channels that are givers.
Yeah,
There's this one
exactly.
channel, I just happened to stumble across them, where they knit hats for the homeless. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a channel? And
Yeah.
that's clearly a giving channel. And your channel is a giving channel, which is why I'm attracted there, because you're
Mhm.
always trying to help your
Mhm.
subscribers. Like you
Mhm.
offered to come here to help me. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. I can't
Yeah.
tell you enough how
Mhm.
much I appreciate that, because I'm usually just in your lives, just
Mhm.
watching. I've never actually spoken to you
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, we can do
however,
this.
someday I do want to come through Oklahoma and visit. Someday.
We can do this again anytime. And before I know we'll end this here soon. And I've said this before, I do have another interview with Carol from Broke but Bountifully Blessed on, I'm going to get it wrong. I think it's Tuesday. I got to look at her email. Anybody else here wants me to come on your channel, I'm more than willing to announce it on my channel. I'll come to your channel. You can interview me just like this. We have a great time. And hopefully you can gain some hours, maybe some subscribers. And I know you're the same way. You're open to that. And there's other channels that are open to that. And we really want to pay back what because we got monetized because of you and everybody in the community that helped that watched our playlists. I could put out 1,000 videos tomorrow, but if I don't get one subscriber or one like, they don't mean anything. They didn't do anything. They add nothing to the analytics. I'm not going to get monetized just because I did 1,000 videos. It takes the actual people to watch it, to interact with you, and to like it, share, and comment. So I'm willing to do that. Just email me. My email is in my main channel description, or you can get it from Dr. Ninja Turtle. We're open to it, man. I'm willing to come on, and you can ask me whatever you want. What I can answer, I'll answer. What I can't, I won't. And if I won't answer it because of issues where I can't, because of something in my life where I can't talk about it, then I'll just tell you I can't. But it won't because I won't want to, just because I can't. There's some things I can't talk about right now that with my grandson and stuff, because there's things that are happening that I have to wait for. Otherwise, I could be more open about some of the situation, but I can't. So that's why I say, if you ask me a question I can't answer, there will be a reason why. I'm not just being a jerk saying I'm not going to answer that. But thank you for having me on. I appreciate
No,
it.
no. Everybody that knows you knows that you are not a jerk. So, you have so many fans. I
Yeah,
mean, just, and it's growing. Your community is growing,
it is. Yeah.
and it's so widespread. It's not just gardening, it's not just cooking channels or
Mhm.
creators that are following you.
Yeah.
It's people. People
Yeah.
are following you and your sunrises and your sunsets, all of it. You know, um,
You know
so
what's interesting?
anyway, I want go
You know
ahead.
what's interesting is I didn't realize there's a community out there I found. It's Pours In with Love. It's Pourres, I think, in with love. I think you know her. She does epoxy pouring. Cra-
No, I haven't
Crazy
seen
stuff.
that.
That is it. That community is huge. I saw her one day pouring the epoxy. I thought it was awesome. So I watched. And oh no, no, I got her from JC Calamity Jane because JC was doing her earrings. And I saw Pours In with Love there. So I clicked on because she had me I had a shield. So I clicked on her. I went and she's pouring this purplish kind of epoxy into a mold, pulling it out and making these trays and dishes and stuff. And I'm like, I didn't know that existed, you know? So I started following her. And then there's a girl in her, Amy something, I can't remember. But I picked up like 10 subscribers just because I found that intriguing. And I watch their stuff all the time now. And it's like, this is really wild, you know?
Well, I'm going to have to get
Yeah. Yeah. Email me.
channel. I watched a channel diamond painting, and I
Yeah.
didn't know diamond painting was a thing.
hmm Yeah.
And so that's something that I could do in the winter if I'm not traveling.
Right.
It's just a craft. It's a little
hmm
crafty thing. So there's a
Yeah.
lot on YouTube that I'm learning that I
Yeah.
have never seen before. You know, um, but I am going to have to go because
Yeah.
one, I don't want to hold you on too long. I've gone over my
Yeah.
hour. But I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
for coming on. I can't believe we actually did this, and I'm traveling. I'm in a
Yeah.
hotel room. Yeah, so
Let's do it again
I can't
sometime.
believe this.
Let's do it again sometime.
Well, you let me know
Yep.
because I will be open and I'll be home. I'll be back in Alabama. You know,
Okay.
but thank you, everybody. This is Okie from Okies Eden, and I'm sorry that I didn't see the chat. CL Fantasy says I love watching pouring resin with love.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
CL Fantasy, I watch her painting, and I've
Yeah.
watched her whole playlist.
Yeah.
Um, and so so she mentioned it, and so I'm going to copy the chat. That's what I do. And
Okay.
then the folks that are in my chat, I make sure I go to all their channels and support
Oh,
their
that's nice.
channels as well.
That's a good idea. That's a good
Yeah, that's
idea.
one of the things that I do. So but okay, I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to say
Yep.
goodbye to everybody so that I can get on with my day. you know
Okay.
um, I'm in Maryland just visiting friends. So
Okay.
thank you, and we will be in touch soon.
Take care.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.